Namaste and welcome to Dulwa Talks, where we bring to you extraordinary stories of everyday women in the outdoors. I'm your host, Juliana, and in today's episode, Marathon Minds, I have a conversation with two super inspiring women. These women's stories literally gave me goosebumps the first time I heard it, so I'm really glad to be able to bring this to you today. Sally and Felicity share about their journeys of the Tenzing Hillary Everest Marathon in this episode, and we talk about the connections of mental and physical health, as well as navigating the world of endurance sports as women athletes. Our first guest today is Sally Orange, MBE, which stands for Member of the Order of the British Empire, I just learned. Sally is a multi-award-winning military veteran. She's a physiotherapist and one of the UK's most inspiring endurance athletes and adventurers. She's got over 22 years of exemplary service in the Royal Army Medical Corps, and she combines service, sport, and storytelling in many powerful ways. She's completed over 80 marathons, 8 iron distance triathlons, and even swam across the English Channel. She holds 11 world records and is uniquely the only person to have run a marathon on every continent dressed in a fancy dress, most often a piece of food. An Invictus Games medalist and national ambassador for the Army Cadets, Sally uses her platform to advocate for mental health and draws from her lived experience with depression and anxiety. She's got an infectious energy and a deep compassion in her can-do optimism that have made her a force of positive change across veteran, youth, and mental health communities. We're so happy to have you here, Sally. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Juliana. Really looking forward to it.
We also have with us today Felicity Ashley. Felicity is an elite endurance athlete, leadership speaker, and mother of 3, whose story is very much grounded in super extraordinary resilience. After unknowingly battling bowel cancer, she rode 3,000 miles across the Atlantic, transforming recovery into radical personal growth. Her recent feat, completing the Everest Marathon, which she did with Sally, was on the 3rd anniversary of her cancer diagnosis and marks a super profound milestone in her journey, which we'll explore a little bit more later as well. She's a former marketing executive turned speaker and adventurer, and was also highly commended at the 2024 Speaker Awards, known for helping audience turn, quote-unquote, choppy waters into calm confidence. She uses sport as a platform for storytelling, advocating for mental well-being, and empowering women to embrace challenge. Welcome to the podcast, Felicity.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here.
Amazing. Sally and Felicity both are also featured in the upcoming documentary When Life Gives You Lemons, Everyone's Everest, and we'll be talking about that in a little bit as well. Also, again, a big shout out to Friends of Nepal for connecting us with Sally and Felicity, and to the British Council for the support for helping us do this. So Sally and Felicity have recently returned from Nepal. I hope you had a good journey. I hope you're feeling recovered from the marathon. How's it going?
Yes, so far so good. Back to earth with a bump now, but it was an amazing experience. Delighted to have done it. Who'd have thought that? Well, I think it's a week today that we've been back, but it takes a bit of adjusting back to life back home, but definitely getting there.
Yeah. For those who might not know about what Everest Marathon is, so it's an international high-altitude adventure sports event. It's the highest marathon in the world. That's held on the 29th of May every year. And why 29th of May is special is because that is the day that that Tenzing Norgay and Sir Edmund Hillary successfully ascended Mount Everest in 1953. And every year on this day, the Everest Marathon, basically from the Everest Base Camp through the Sherpa trails of the Khumbu Valley, there are runners from all over the world and Nepal who come in to run this trail. So to start us off today, what motivated each of you to take on this big challenge of running the Everest Marathon? How was your journey, and how did you prepare for your race? Maybe we can begin with Sally and then Felicity.
Yeah, so this was actually my second time of taking on the Everest Marathon. Last year I took it on because the year before, I'd actually ran 7 marathons on 7 continents in 7 consecutive days. And I did that to take the mental health message around the world. And so by last year taking on the Everest Marathon, I really wanted to take the mental health message to the top of the world and really shout about it from there. And I did it last year dressed as a slice of lemon, because ice and a slice. I knew it was going to be cold at the top when we started at base camp, and it was just a slightly different way of getting people to smile, and then them asking why was I dressed as a lemon. And I tell people that I wanted to change the conversation and break the stigma associated with poor mental health. So it was an incredible experience last year. The toughest marathon I've ever done, and I've now ran 87 marathons. So I've done quite a few in different environments, but yeah, this still by far is the hardest. And yeah, I wanted to go back because it is such an inclusive event. I think there was over 35 different countries taking part, and it's just the camaraderie and everything that you have just to get to the start of this race. I mean, it's an 11-day trek up to Everest Base Camp, and not everybody gets there because of illness, because of altitude. So actually looking back, it's 3 flights and 11 days trekking to get to the start, which is an adventure in itself. But just an absolutely fabulous event, and really proud to have taken part in it twice now.
Amazing. Thanks, Sally. How about you, Felicity?
Well, I didn't have a background in high altitude marathons, unlike Sally, or even many marathons at all. I've done 2. So coming at it from a very different angle. But as you mentioned in your introduction, I was diagnosed with bowel cancer, stage 3 bowel cancer, 3 years ago. And my oncologist advised me to have a big party at 3 years after my diagnosis, assuming I was still healthy, and a bigger party at 5 years. So the 20th of May this year marked my 3-year anniversary of my cancer diagnosis. And I really wanted to do something to mark the occasion. Not quite the party my oncologist had in mind necessarily, but something, I suppose, to prove to myself that I was better, but not just better, I'd come back stronger. And so I wanted to do a big physical challenge, because my diagnosis came just after having rowed across the Atlantic. So I wanted to almost top and tail my story and find something to demonstrate to myself that I was better. But also it was about inspiring other people who might be going through similar challenges, whether it's a health challenge or something else, to show them that there is light at the end of the tunnel and you can still go on to kind of have hopes and dreams and live them. And really, Sally was my inspiration for doing it, because I remember seeing Sally's photos from last year and seeing her running against the backdrop of the Kathmandu Glacier. And I was just blown away by those images. And having got to know Sally as a speaker, I knew that she'd done hundreds of challenges over the years. So when I was starting to think about what I might do, I thought Sally was the perfect person to talk to. So I called Sally in January and I said, look, I want to do something around May time to mark my 3 years. What do you suggest? And she said, well, I'm doing the Everest Marathon again. And it just felt, it felt serendipitous. She was going out there again to do it. It's the thing that I remember having seen her doing. And I just thought, what an amazing place and an amazing experience to mark my 3 years and to really celebrate life and health, running a marathon with a backdrop of the Himalayas.
Lovely, yeah. Celebrating life and health. I think that's something that I'm taking with me as well. Saying that as I am recovering from a sprained ankle at the moment, but I love that that Sally was an inspiration to you, Felicity. Maybe we can talk a little bit more about how you two know each other, and was it through sports? Did you know each other before? How did this come about?
Yeah, Sally and I met online, not online dating or anything. We met online through a virtual speaking community probably about 18 months ago now. And we bonded immediately because Sally was sitting in her apartment in Tenerife, with a sort of the backdrop of La Gomera in the background, and I'd been telling her about my Atlantic row, which goes from La Gomera to Antigua. And so we sort of immediately bonded over that. And then just, I suppose, a natural inclination to adventurous activities and sport. Sally was actually at the time doing a half marathon every day during the month of January, and I was blown away by that. So we immediately clicked, and then we met a couple of times. So we just sort of gradually got to know each other, I suppose, through the speaking community. I hadn't spent a huge amount of time together, but I knew instinctively that Sally was the go-to person to talk to about challenges, having done so many.
Lovely. That's beautiful, and I think that's something that we people don't often talk about when it comes to like endurance sports, of the community that you find, the people that you connect with, because well, you were all crazy enough to do something like as challenging as the Everest Marathon together, or maybe even run a 5K or a 10K or a half or another ultra marathon, right? For me personally as well, I think the reason I've continued to like pursue running is because I've found really inspiring people in the community who like continue to push each other and like help each other out, and just be like, hey, by the way, there's this race happening next month. Would you like to join? And then that, I think that camaraderie is what like really draws me to the running community as well. So I'm glad that you were able. You said you met through the speaking community, but also the sports running communities. What has also kept you both connected? And talking about back to the Everest Marathon, I can only imagine the kind of training and like acclimatization. Like you said, it took like a total of like 11 days, 3 flights. That's so much that goes into preparing for a race like this, right? And Sally, you've described your experience of the Everest Marathon as being like epic, but also very brutal, and at the same time really stunning with the landscape. You also completed it this time dressed as a lion, if I'm not wrong, to raise awareness for mental health and breast cancer, like you said. And of like 87 marathons, how does the Everest Marathon compare to like your previous endurance challenges? You've done like so many different amazing stuff when it comes to endurance, not just marathons, but triathlons and others, right? So how was the Everest Marathon compared to your previous challenges, and how did you prepare for it?
Yeah, I mean, I found those words last year, the 3 words of epic, brutal, and stunning. And I was sort of saying this to people who were going to do it their first time, and even again the second time, it seemed like it was even more epic, even more brutal, and even more stunning. My preparation, I think there was a part of me that the mindset that I knew that I'd done the marathon before, and I'm not one that's great at preparing or training for events. I kind of just, I'm not going for a time, I'm not going to be the fastest, or I'm never going to be the fittest there. And I generally just go to have the time of my life. So, you know, the preparation this time, unfortunately, was halted a little bit because, in a strange twist of fate, having just heard Felicity's story, I actually found out that I had breast cancer just prior to going out. So that put a little bit of a spanner in the works as, first of all, whether or not I'd actually even be able to go. Because I didn't know where my surgery was going to be. I didn't know what the treatment was going to be. So there was, you know, elements of anxiety, but actually, who is the best person to call and say, this is what's happened? But Felicity. So, you know, whilst one person can be an inspiration in the starting point, you know, they then turn into your inspiration in different ways. And almost to have that handhold of, you're going to be okay. This, you know, somebody who's been through it and come out the other side, for me was, you know, just a perfect thing to do. And I was so desperate still to want to do the marathon because of knowing the, you know, everything that it involves, the people that you meet, the country, meeting so many different Nepali, different communities. And I'm pleased to say that my consultant did say, yep, we can sort of delay your surgery for a little bit. And yeah, so I was able to go and do it. So very, very different build up to a marathon this time, but I'd still say of all the single marathons that I've done, it is the toughest. I think there was 3,500 meters of climbing in the marathon, even though you effectively are going down from Everest Base Camp. Anyone who's ever been to the Khumbu region will know there isn't a down. You don't have a down without an up, and vice versa. So it kind of added to the challenge, and really meant that we had to sort of pull on so many different mindset tools really whilst actually doing the marathon.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Sally. And I did get to know about your diagnosis as well, and I think that speaks to so much of your courage and your resilience that that you've not just thought of doing this, but you've completed this and you're now back home, and I think you've begun your treatment, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, actually, I suppose what I forgot to mention was, as soon as I got diagnosed as the breast cancer, I thought, oh, what a great way to raise awareness. And so I actually trekked up to base camp wearing a giant boob costume, which certainly turned heads from other trekkers, other runners, the porters. It was fantastic to see so many people just embracing this piece of material effectively, but in a fun way. And it was amazing what stories opened up of other people that had either suffered, who had family members who suffered. So it was trekking to base camp as the boob, and then the quick change to the lime costume, ready for the marathon. So multi costume sport now.
I saw the photo with the giant boob, and initially I think it was I was just like, wait, what is this? Is this what I think it is? But it was, and I was just like, oh, that is so cool though. That again, I think people around the world, with the statistics around breast cancer and how rampant it is, especially among women. And I'm glad that you were able to initiate those conversations, and that with your goal being around awareness, right? For it, and then with being dressed as a lineman, raising more awareness around mental health as well.
It was incredible because I did wonder whether culturally it would be acceptable. But yeah, it really, really was by, as I say, men and women. And as there was 35 different countries there, we saw lots of different cultures as we went along. But, it raised a smile in everybody, which was great to see.
Yeah, it was amazing to see firsthand, actually, the difference it made, Sally wearing the giant boob outfit, because it really did. People stopped and they asked questions, and it started those conversations. And that's what Sally always talks about, is that wearing something unusual is the start of a conversation, and that's what it's all about. And it was amazing to see that, actually, along the trek. It probably slowed progress down a little bit, but that's no bad thing when you're trying to acclimatize.
Again, the goal isn't to finish first at all, right? And Felicity, you were sharing about how this coincided with your 3-year anniversary of your diagnosis, and how would you say this milestone has influenced your experience of the Everest Marathon?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely made it much more significant. The reason I was there was because I'd had cancer and because it was marking the 3-year milestone. And so, there was quite a lot of personal reflection, I think, looking back over the last 3 years and the journey that I've been on. But as well as the reflection, just an enormous amount of gratitude, gratitude to have had the opportunity and the health and the means to do the marathon and to be out in Nepal and doing the trek with so many other amazing people. And, I would never wish a cancer diagnosis on anybody, of course not. But actually, I can't look back and regret it necessarily, because it's opened so many doors for me. It's given me so many opportunities. It's given me a new perspective on life. It's given me that notion that life is there to be lived. You never know what's around the corner. And so seize the opportunities that come your way. But beyond that, go and make your own opportunities as well. And so, yeah, it did make me think, long and hard about everything that I've been through, but not in a negative way, very much in a positive way. And it's about, hope for the future. And you talked about kind of training and preparation beforehand. And my approach to training was quite different to Sally's. And it was, I had quite a sort of a rigorous approach to it, because I hadn't done as many marathons and I hadn't ever tested myself at altitude. So this was my opportunity really to push my own limits, to see what I was capable of, and to demonstrate to myself that I was better and stronger than before. So yeah, the cancer was definitely it played a big part in my experience. I marked the actual day of my 3-year diagnosis when I was there, and we recorded some videos for the film as well. And so yeah, it was a really poignant, kind of significant time, and so special to be able to do it with Sally, but be able to do it in that environment as well, which is such an incredibly inspiring place to be.
Even training for a marathon or even a half marathon or any of this distance race or any endurance sports already is so physically intensive, and to do that with the kind of experiences that you've had, especially with your health, both of you, I think that's just super, super inspiring. And also, like you said, obviously don't wish that on anyone, but I'm sure that must have been very challenging mentally for both of you as well. And Sally, especially, you've been quite open about your journey with depression and anxiety, and you've done so much in endurance sports, specifically running, like you said. How do you think, or how, for you personally, how do events like the Everest Marathon or endurance sports in general, what role does that play in your mental health journey?
I think probably the biggest part of it is the actual community of other people there. I guess when you're going to do something like that, there's a self-selected group of people that people think that they're going to be able to take on a marathon, and a marathon at that altitude. So it is a certain specific, and most people have not gone there having never done anything before. So I think there's lots to learn from other people, whether it be that they'd rode an ocean or climbed a mountain or swam, a channel. Everybody's got something to bring to the party, and I think the best of it is just, having your ears open and being curious about what other people have done. And also the great thing is you find out other things that are out there that you perhaps never heard about. And that's one of the things that I love about it. What particularly this marathon allowed us to do was really connect with nature. You just had to, in a couple of ways really, that you'd take a few steps and you'd have to take a breath. You had to take a breath in, because the altitude, you were trying to get your breath back. And for me, it was almost as though nature was slowing you down on purpose by saying, don't run all of this, because you need to look round, open your eyes and have a look what there is. And that was my excuse when I was struggling to breathe, that it was nature's own way of showing itself to me. But it wasn't just the sights, it was the sounds, sort of the rivers, the birds, things that I hadn't really expected. And just the conversations with other people as well. I really couldn't recommend it enough to anyone, because it really is just a fabulous experience. It's tough. It really is tough. But I think that sense of satisfaction when you've achieved something that is tough is actually so much more than if you'd taken the easy route. But I think that's the same. You say yourself with, starting with a 5K, everybody starts somewhere. And, if you can just get that spark or that feeling from doing a 5K, that then makes you think, oh, maybe I could do a 10K, or I'm going to push myself to do a half marathon. And, it kind of gathers momentum. But I think it's often the people that are doing it along with it. And it was just so supportive. Other people on you'd have like little chats with people and ask how people were doing, and help each other's along the way. And I think that's what I really enjoyed about it as well. And nobody was really bothered where I couldn't even tell you where I came. It isn't a case of where did you actually, were you first, second or third? Because I have to say, you Nepalis, you just wipe the floor with the rest of us when it comes to speed and being at that altitude and that terrain. How on earth people can run in that terrain, I mean, that's what blows my mind. Sort of meeting some of those super elite athletes who just take it all very, very sort of in their stride. Oh, it's just a little marathon. Wow, they are incredible.
It's like just running in your backyard, but the backyard is already like the terrain and everything is there. Like and like you said, I think For even for me, when I started running, I think it was the realization of what my body is capable of, and then you just continue to do more and more and more of it. And like you were describing, Sally, I think it was such a mindful experience from what I'm hearing, of just being mindful of what's around you, who's around you. And I think when it comes to navigating mental health challenges specifically, it is like endurance sports is connected with people who take up endurance sports are there is research around being connected with trauma healing. There are connections between like being physically active and how that improves mental health. And again, it might look different for different people, right? I wouldn't say running is for everyone. It might not be for everyone, but whatever gets your body moving. I think movement is key when it comes to mental health. And a lot of times, even when I'm chatting with some of my friends, I've recently started sharing about my running journey as well. And this was super inspired by how much you share on LinkedIn, how authentically you share, both of you share your stories, because I don't see bodies like myself on trail or on the road races as much. And I am usually at the back of the pack. But the main thing is to get the body moving, because that helps the mind process and regulate emotions and all of that. And like you said, different people might have different goals, different capacity in their bodies, but hearing both of you share your journeys really is like I had goosebumps as you were sharing about like how, despite all of the challenges that life has thrown at you, you've or might I say all of the lemons that you've made you've turned this around, and that speaks so much again of both of your courage and your resilience. And I also do want to highlight that, especially in this conversation and on the podcast as well, we've usually had women in the outdoors and sports come in and share about their experiences. And we live in a world where women don't experience the world the same way as everyone else, especially our male counterparts. When it comes to women in sports, specifically adventure sports, I feel like there are certain unique challenges that come in from just being from a certain gender, from a certain background. So I'd love to hear from both of you if there are any such like unique challenges that you've faced and how you've navigated them being women in endurance sports. Maybe Felicity, we can start with you, and then Sally.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I think I've been fairly lucky. I've always found endurance events and sport quite inclusive, I think, from a gender perspective. But I would say, particularly my experience of having rowed across the Atlantic as a crew of 4 working mums called the Mothership, I would say it's almost other people's perceptions about what we were doing, which were the barriers or the blockers or the challenges. And it was getting over the mum guilt almost, getting over the idea that we shouldn't be leaving our children to go off on adventures for a period of time. For me, during the row, it was 2 months. And I think, society, like it or not, society has a different idea of what women's roles are. And generally speaking, women are still seen as, your role is at home as chief caregiver to children. I know that's not always the case, but that's definitely a challenge and a blocker, I think, to participation in some of these longer endurance events. And it's something that I think every individual has to try and find their way around or way through. And from my perspective, it was actually about challenging that perception and about inspiring my children and showing them that, it doesn't matter what gender they are or how old they are. They can go and do anything they like. And it was almost worth going through the challenges of what other people thought about us to be able to create that example for my children.
Lovely. I'd love to know what your children think about. Like, are they into sports as well? Do they run with you at all?
They are into sport. In fact, all 3, I've got 2 boys and a girl. They all play football. And, I just love seeing them being out and active and participating in team sports and really enjoying being active. I think one of the best things about me doing adventurous things is that they don't really think it's anything other than normal. They don't think it's different that mums should go and row the Atlantic or go and run an Everest Marathon. For them now growing up, that's absolutely part of daily life. And that's the beauty of it, is that they'll grow up just assuming those things are open to them. And that's really why I've done some of the things that I've done, to give them that to give them that almost that perspective that there are no limits to what they can achieve in life. So I'm sure they will, as they get older, they will start to appreciate that perhaps some of these things aren't quite run of the mill, aren't ordinary. But for the moment, I'm just thrilled that they think it's what people do.
Love that. Thank you, Felicity. Sally, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say one thing that I've learned from endurance sports is never judge a book by its cover, because you see all shapes, sizes, ages, genders, and you're always surprised. There might be the larger person that you can think, how are they going to manage this? And they're streets ahead of you, or whether that's be swimming, cycling, running, all of them. And other people who are super slim or super tall that you can think, oh, they're going to be a racing snake. They haven't always got the mindset. So it's the combination of the mindset and the preparation and the desire, because actually not everybody's success is the same. So for me, it's actually finishing a marathon. For other people, if they finish but they come maybe near the back, they're not happy with that, and that's not success to them. So it's almost working out to an individual what is success to them, because it's different for us all. And let's face it, only one person can come first, but we all get the same medal. So does it really matter? You've all got that shared experience. And one of the best things about the Everest Marathon was the next day, being able to sort of walk around Namche and just sort of see other people and ask what their experience of the event was. Because even though it's the same event, there won't be one single person who's had exactly the same experience as anyone else there, because there'll be different crew at a different time. And there was one bit on the marathon which was really lovely. I say it was lovely. Actually, at the time, it was awful, because you have to go out and back, and it's soul destroying because you have to go up this hill. But what happens is you see other people coming the other way. So you do actually, and I was just getting onto the loop, and Felicity was just coming off it. But it was great to be able to say, yeah, we saw each other through, we had that shared moment of, oh, you looked really good. Yeah, you looked really fresh. And just those things. And you could also then say to other people, yeah, I saw them at that point and they looked okay. And I think it was just the concern that everybody else had for each other, because sometimes you can be doing really well and then you can have a slower part and then, maybe pick up again. So yeah, just, the whole experience. But that is my one lesson, is just never judge a book by its cover. And even, people can tell you things, oh, I've done this, I've done that, I've done the other. It doesn't actually mean anything until on that very day, because you could have run hundreds of marathons beforehand, but you can have got ill the day before. I did actually get diarrhea the day before. Not that I was going to be super speedy, so I'm not making excuses with that. But there's, there are different things that you can't control on the day. Some people don't react well to cold weather. Some don't react well to heat. And we had it all, because when we started off, it was really cold. But then during the day, it became really hot. A lot of people got sunburnt and their hands got sunburnt, places that you wouldn't normally think of. So yeah, there's just so many different challenges. But I think it's just whatever your experience, just looking at the lessons and thinking it was an experience, and what would I do differently, but what actually did I enjoy about it as well? Because there was times during that event where I just thought, I'm not enjoying this at all. But then you look back and you get these rose-tinted glasses and you manage to forget all of those things, and you just come away just saying it was brilliant.
And before you know it, you signed up to next year.
Yep. It does not stop. I love how you shared about these races and these endurance sport events, especially. You see such diverse people from the body types, from ages, backgrounds. And while during the race and while people are participating in these events, that experience can feel quite inclusive. Sometimes accessing those events is not equally accessible to everybody around the world. I've been a part of conversations around trail runners in and around Nepal as well, who have spoken of how difficult it is for them to access opportunities like running running in Europe, for example, because they don't have access to run bases that qualify them there. There are now platforms like the Asia Trailmaster and others that actually allow for local runners in Nepal and people like in mostly around Asia to support with accessing like bigger international races as well. But both of you as international athletes, as people who are connected to these communities, different like organizations, how do you think like international athletes in general, international organizations can actually contribute to fostering more representation, more equity when it comes to accessing global endurance events for everyone? Felicity, do you want to start maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was acutely aware that I was incredibly lucky to have the means to be able to go and do something like the Everest Marathon, because it isn't a cheap undertaking, and and it's not, as you say, it's not accessible to everybody. And perhaps one of the answers is that entry fees from the Western world potentially can cover somebody from an unrepresented country to take part as well. So they're almost, subsidized places, or organizations coming forward and sponsoring people to take part as well, to make it more accessible to everyone, because it isn't, it is a costly business, and that immediately makes it exclusive rather than inclusive. So I think organizations, coming forward to support other people taking part as well is a key part of it, but also those people who can afford to take part, helping other people to do so too.
I think one of the things I would say is the outdoors is actually a great leveler. So once you're all there, you don't really know anybody else's background. You're all sort of having to, put one foot in front of the other. If you're sleeping in tea houses, it's all the same tea house. You can't have, the higher spec hotels that some are staying in that others aren't staying. So yes, actually getting there is expensive, but I think once you're with that group, it does sort of live. I wouldn't know anybody's sort of financial background or unless they mentioned it, but it actually doesn't really matter there as well, because there's only a certain amount of toilet rolls, there's only a certain amount of Cokes that you can get. You could have all the money in the world there and it wouldn't hugely change a lot of things, because you're just in nature. And I think that's where the mountains particularly is a great leveler. And yeah, people go there for different things, but they, as Felicity says, we are hugely privileged to get there. But I think at the same time, whilst we're privileged, I think it's also worth mentioning that there is sacrifice that comes with that privilege. That a lot of people say, oh, it's all right for you, you've got this, that and the other. Felicity had to sacrifice time with the family, and other people perhaps wouldn't want to do that. That doesn't mean that they can't do it, it's just that they choose not to. So I think there's elements of choice in there, but just people, not everybody wants to do the same thing, which is great, because otherwise there'd be too many people doing some of these things.
Sally and Felicity, it's been such a pleasure getting to know from your, like, having this like one-on-one conversation and getting to know your stories. You're both ambassadors of Friends of Nepal, as both of you were appointed on the 10th anniversary of the 2015 Nepal earthquake. You have a documentary coming up that's called When Life Gives You Lemons, Everyone's Everest, where both of you are sharing your super powerful stories of endurance, and also about strengthening cultural humanitarian ties between the UK and Nepal. So as a close, I would love to hear from both of you. How do you hope that your journey, this documentary, impact? How do you hope? What impact do you hope that this film and this in your journeys impact the audience in UK, in Nepal, all over the world? And what legacy do you hope that it leaves in, all of these aspects of sports, of storytelling, and of just global solidarity? Felicity, maybe we can begin with you, and then Sally.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, it's showing a spotlight on, on Nepal, on the extraordinary country and the people there. And then from my personal involvement and my personal story, it's it's showing people that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and that whatever challenges they might be facing, you can get through them, and there is hope, and there is, adventure and everything else at the end of it. So it's for me very much a message of positivity that I hope will inspire others to help them get through whatever challenges they're facing at the time.
Yeah, I could only echo really, and wanting to just to showcase the incredible country that Nepal is, just not just it's the beauty of the scenery, but it's people, the kindness, the compassion. I just think you're just all born with a smile on your face, and not everybody has a huge amount in Nepal, but they certainly make the most of everything they do have. And what we hope to show with the documentary is also some of the sort of the tools and the techniques that can be used if people are struggling, that perhaps that we have used in the past, and that could be used in the future, so that people can sort of see that there is light at the end of the tunnel. We're proof that we've got through some difficult things, and we're nothing special. Anybody can do these things if they have the right mindset. And I think it's really important that showing people that it's not easy. We're not going to pretend it's easy. But if you've got that right mindset and you put one foot in front of the other, then just slowly, you do kind of get there.
And I think I would add to that, and if you've got the right people around you. And I think that's what both of us found through the experience of doing it together, but also meeting the incredible people we met along the way, whether they be the Nepali guides and porters or the other competitors, was that strength of community and power of connection to help you through tough times.
Thank you, Sally and Felicity, for sharing your stories, sharing your journey. And I think there's so much to take away. I'm like overwhelmed with inspiration right now. But what is staying with me is when it comes to endurance sports, when it comes to navigating any challenges in life, especially when it is mental, it does begin with yourself. It does begin with you believing in yourself and just, like you said, putting one foot in front of the other. But in that process, you end up meeting people like this, like how the two of you came together and found inspiration and support in each other, and then connections with communities across your literally like across the world from where you come from. I think when it comes to sports, that's such a beautiful thing of being connected with community, with local communities, with other communities around the world, and just, I guess, surprising yourselves as well with the kind of feat that you have with this, taking on these physical challenges. It might even take on it's definitely physically and mentally challenging, but that's also what I think that runner's high that keeps you going. And I think for me personally, it's been super, super inspiring listening to both of your journeys and your stories. And we will definitely follow your journey through, especially with the documentary. Super, super excited for whenever that comes out. A big, big shout out to the Friends of Nepal team and to the British Council Culture Connects program, through which this conversation has been made possible. And we will hopefully be seeing more of you on more runs somewhere along the way. And I hope to personally meet the two of you at some point, maybe in a race. We'll see about that. But yeah, thank you again, both of you, so much for your time. I would love to continue this conversation, but we will have to close now. Do you have any final words to share, either of you?
Just thank you very much for having us. It's been an absolute privilege to share part of our story and our experiences with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the end part of our title, Everyone's Everest, is that people do have different mountains to climb. It doesn't have to be an endurance event. We actually, when we did get stuck in Lukla, when we weren't able to make it back to meet you in person, we were honoured with music. And I know for a lot of people something that can help with connection and community is music. And we were very lucky that our doctor played the guitar and one of the other runners had an incredible voice, and we were just so privileged that one afternoon we sat in a tea room just listening to them. So if running isn't your thing, if sport isn't your thing, there are other things out there that can be just as powerful and make just as an impact, because everyone's Everest is different. But thank you so much, Julia.